Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
I have Ted Rubin here today. Ted is a leading social marketing strategist. He is the international keynote speaker, business advisor. Formerly, he was the MC and host of the Brand Innovator Summits, best-selling author, connector, provocateur, and let me tell you, he's brilliant. He used to work with Seth Godin. You want to listen up as Ted speaks. And Ted, I believe you and I were introduced by David Breyer, branding genius, best-selling author as well of Brand Intervention with Damon John. I'm excited to have you here today.
Well, excited to be here, William. It's anytime we interact, there's so much value added to anything we talk about that I really enjoy it. And yes, let's just throw a shout out to David Breyer because he's one of the smartest guys I know. I love spending time with him. Yeah. And I believe the last time I was with him, you and I got together as well.
We did. We got together at, it was one of the Brand Innovator Summits there that you did over at Land O'Lakes here in Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah. I want to dig into some of your thoughts, especially on some of your more recent books as well. Before we do, I just want to say what our sponsorship is here. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million. And we were ranked as the 12th fastest growing agency in the world by Adweek. You can learn more on our website at Element, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. That said, enough of the boring stuff. Let's get into the good stuff. I've known you now for almost a decade, I feel like. And I believe that was because when you wrote your book, Return on Relationships, I quoted that in an article and reached out and worked together with you on that a little bit there. Because of that, I know that this is not just fluff that you talk about when you talk about return on relationship. This is something that you believe to your core. And so I wanted to kind of get into what led you to where you are. You're somebody who is at the forefront of a lot of what's going on social media. What brought you to this point?
Oh, boy, trying to figure that out for myself. Well, it's kind of been a curving road, and it's one of the things I like to talk about when I'm talking to younger people, that a plan is fine, but don't expect your plan to pan out. Be prepared to evolve it, be prepared to bob it and sway and, find opportunity as you go. So my career kind of followed a bunch of different paths, but, we could have an hour-long conversation about that, and I don't think that's what we're here for. To fast forward, I was looking for a new opportunity in 1997. I discovered the internet. I started looking for potential jobs. I was living in South Florida, where I had relocated a number of years before. I was looking to get back to New York. I felt it was the center of all that was going on with that then, and I discovered Seth Godin. So I basically read an article where Seth was interviewed by somebody, and he was talking about Yoyodyne, which was the first online direct marketing company. And a lot of things he said just rang true with me. And at the end of the interview, the interviewer said, Seth, this sounds like a really cool company. Do you have any job openings? And he goes, well, I don't have any specific openings to share, but I will always hire somebody smart. That's how I build my company. He said, and I'm desperate for people that know how to sell something that nobody's ever sold before, because nobody had sold internet advertising or promotion or whatever whatever the marketing vehicles he was building was new to the mix and to brands. And I immediately, I sat there, raised my hand. I wrote him a letter typed on my IBM typewriter.
I love it. Yes.
Along with a printed out resume. Basically saying, I'm smart and I can sell anything. And I was at the point in my career where I was in the investment business. I had a very successful career in it. The market turned. I got burnt out. I tried a few other things. I was building a sales force for a company, but enjoying the interaction with building the team, but not the business itself. Yeah. I wanted something that I felt had this growth potential. At that time of my life, I was turning 40 years old. And, my wife at the time, who was my ex, said, why are you applying for a job that doesn't exist? And a week later, we got a call. And I say we because we shared a cell phone at the time. Back when they were really expensive, and you'd have one number with two phones. And she got the call, and she called me. She goes, "Oh my God, they called!" And I ended up meeting Seth, which is another great story, but I'm not sure we have time for it, exactly how it happened. But I went up to New York. I met with a few companies. I was fortunate enough that Seth and his team wanted to hire me. I went to work with him. I realized very quickly that I was that I was sitting next to brilliance. I mean, this is before Seth was Seth. Seth was already a wonderkind in the brand marketing world because he had been, I think, the youngest brand manager at Atari, and then he had written a couple of books with Steve Levinson about meeting people and about relationships and things like that. It was before he really wrote his first bestseller. And I was fortunate enough I moved up. My family was still in Florida. I made the mistake of living with my in-laws. Don't ever do that, especially if they like the Costanzas. But it was meant to be because I am not an early riser, but I couldn't stand being in that house when they woke up. Sure. So I was out of the house early. Seth was an early riser. We were the only two in this cavernous office at Yoyodyne at 6:30 in the morning. And Seth had these ideas percolating out of him. And, I was smart enough to just shut up and listen. And I really just learned so much. I was sitting there when he wrote the article, Permission Marketing for Fast Company, which became his first best-selling book when he extended upon it. And I was there when e-commerce was a catalog online, when internet marketing was just banners and it was basically everything was CPMs and it was a copy of what was being done in magazines and newspapers. And I was there for the whole evolution of it. So it was really cool. I lived through us being acquired by Yahoo. I worked for Yahoo for a while because of that. I ran a whole sales team there. Months after I got there, I was able to have that opportunity. Again, Seth recognized that I didn't have experience in what he was selling or his ideas, but I had experience in building a team. And he allowed me to do that. And then I moved on to a gaming company, and then I moved on to 800 Flowers and ran their corporate sales. And it just kept evolving, where the way it got to today was I did a lot of consulting for a long time. Then I had the opportunity to join a company called Elf Cosmetics in 2008. And it was early for them. They were doing about $4 or $5 million in sales. They were strictly online. They had no marketing budget, and people would say, why are you taking a job as a chief marketing officer with no marketing budget? I said, because first of all, it was an amazing product. It was a great opportunity. And look, my opinion is, no offense to major brands, but anybody can build a brand with $100 million marketing budget. Sure. Or let's change that. Many people can build a brand with $100 million marketing budget. I had the opportunity of using every tool at my fingertips to figure out how to build brand awareness and drive sales without any marketing budget, basically. I mean, I had enough money to pay me, one assistant, and a bunch of interns. And thank God that was back when interns only made $10 or $12 an hour. And I also was fortunate that I was at a company that recognized that they were small, that they had to be more efficient. And they let me do anything I wanted. I mean, basically, they couldn't afford corporate counsel for everything that you wrote. So this is back when companies like Sephora and Estee Lauder and L'Oreal would not go on social media, or if they did, it was so limited because they were worried about what to say. Right. And I met some of the early players. I met Gary Vaynerchuk back in 2009. I met Jeff Pulver, who had the 140 conferences. And through that, I met guys like Jeffrey Hazlett and Barry Judge, who were CMOs of Best Buy and Kodak. And they had brilliant ideas, and they really embraced the opportunity in social media. But they had legal teams to answer to and boards to answer to. So we'd sit and brainstorm. And then at the end of it, instead of arguing who's going to try this, they go, you try it. Because I can do it. As long as it didn't cost money, let me do anything I want. I built the first aggregated content site for Elf called Ask Elf, which sucked in anytime their name was mentioned. On YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and it generated huge referral traffic for us. And it was crap. I mean, I remember like the big brands going, oh my God, how could you put that video on? It's some woman with a shaking camera. But talk about authentic, passionate content being created by a woman who just got her $16 worth of makeup that would have cost her $300 from a major brand, and all she wants to do is try it on. Oh my God, my elf came and she's putting on the lipstick. I mean, this was before companies recognized that this could have value. I mean, look at TikTok now. It's kind of what it's all about. Yes, there are your professional TikTokers and your professional content, but the vast majority of it is passionate, authentic either fans of the brand or influencers that are being brought in by the brand, creating content that is driving huge amounts of traffic to brands. So that's kind of how that whole thing progressed. I left there, I went to Open Sky, I learned about peer-to-peer commerce. I built the first Twitter syndication engine of multiple handles that shared out content. Took that with me to Collective Bias, became a partner, built content for brands all across the country. And now, I get to talk about it and advise companies. And with all the people I met, I'm fortunate enough to be able to bring people together and be a connector and make return on relationship really something of value for people.
I told you, absolute genius. You want to listen to him. Like, there's so much that has been done and said that you have just covered right now. And we haven't even gotten into like the meat of this stuff, but you've already covered a lot of things. And one of the things that I love that you said too is, one, going way back, you were like, I was smart enough to shut up and listen. That's something that I feel like a lot of us aren't willing to do. We're so focused, especially like, at a young age, we're so focused on wanting to speak and share and spread our thoughts and ideas out there. And that's not bad. It's great. Get out there and do it. But also be willing to find those people that you can just say, I want to shut up and listen. I want to, learn from what your wisdom has over the last, 10 years, decades, whatever that might be, and grow from that. And the other thing that you said too, is it's like, it took guts. A lot of what you did and a lot of the success here was you had the ability to just say, go do it. Right? Don't overthink it. Don't overanalyze it. Let's just go for it. Let's make this authentic and let's make this a real relationship, I think, with customers and brands. And I think that's kind of where almost like this peak of return on relationship kind of even springs from that idea of like having these real relationships, right?
Well, that's the beauty of the way media works today. Not all media, granted. There are some things that you have to buy in advance and you have to make a campaign. But even those things, you can put a stop on them in a heartbeat. You can alter them or evolve them or change direction with them on a moment's notice. So to take too much time to make a decision on what you want to go with rather than trying something. And often you can also try something in a small way. And it's a mistake some of these brands make. And we've heard about a lot of them, whether it's for the good or for the bad. You don't have to throw – if something is controversial or is on the edge or is something new, you don't have to go all out 100% because you have to plan it 8 months in advance. You can try it, see how the concept takes on, and then expand from there. And look, I'm no genius. What I really am is I'm a guy that has opinions and I'm willing to share them. And as you said, I'm willing to try them. Now, don't try this at home kind of thing. Doesn't mean that's always the right thing. You also have to look around you and see, is this an organization? Is this an environment? Is this a group of people or community I'm working with where that's possible? Today it might not be, but maybe next time you find a gig that is. Again, be aware of your surroundings. Look, I like to say there's an old, I think it's attributed to Dr. Seuss. There's some questions about that. Be who you are and say what you, be who you are, be what you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. And it's something I told my daughters all the time. But at the same time, be aware of your surroundings. Know who you're talking with. Know who you work for. Take baby steps. Don't just jump right out of the box. And then I also want to address something you brought up about, I was smart enough to shut up and listen. I happen to be reading an amazing book right now, and I want to recommend it to your whole audience. It's called Shut the Fuck Up. And it's STFU. But what I'm going to tell you is don't just read the title or read the blurb and think you don't have to read it, because it's only about not talking so much and listening. It's not just about we have one mouth and two eyes and two ears. It goes way beyond that to strategies of how to employ that, to people that are over-talkers, to manage yourself if you're an over-talker, to manage a colleague or a friend or a family member that's that, to realize that social media is a big part of this. And how do you wrap your arms around that? And how has social media evolved? Like, I try to tell companies now, my opinions about Twitter, and not just because of who owns it, but just because of the way it's evolved, are different than they were 10 years ago, or different than they were 5 years ago. I see value, but I also see different ways of using it. And I'll give you a perfect example. And I know I'm going on a little here, but I think this is an important one, because I work with companies and I always tell them they need to have a Twitter presence. Now, as recently as 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, that would be a mistake if you weren't going to man that handle, meaning you weren't going to be prepared for the conversation that would come in, for the inquiries that would come in, for the customer service that might come in. And some brands, you still do have to be prepared for that. But especially with B2B companies, the reason I think it's important is so someone can tag you, so I can share content about you, because I still believe Twitter is an amazing syndication and discovery engine, not as great a conversation engine as it used to be. And if you don't have a place that I can send people to, then I either have to just give your name and you have to hope that they're going to go to Google and look you up if they don't know you. And the odds are, if I'm trying to build brand awareness for you, they don't know you. Or I've got to put your URL, which people are not necessarily apt to want to leave and click on to go to. So simply have a handle where you can have it branded, where you can have a link. Yep. And again, if you're not going to participate a lot, put that on your feed. Put that on your page. Say, hey, we're here so you can connect with us, but we don't communicate here a lot. Or you don't have to do that. But I get so much pushback from companies because now they're still listening to my advice from 5 to 10 years ago that said, you're going to be there, you have to participate. Guess what? These platforms evolve and they change. Yeah. I mean, all of them. You don't think Facebook has value anymore, but if you want to advertise for consumer goods, you better be on Facebook.
Absolutely.
You need to have a page. Again, have one so people can tag you. Okay. Shut the fuck up.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's good. Well, and so, you know, there's a lot there that I want to unpack. If I was going to push it forward a little bit, though, it kind of reminds me of something that you said before, which is looking people in the eye digitally, right? Like that's kind of almost what you're getting to here a little bit with this, where it's like, you know, if I was to meet you on the street and I wanted to communicate and talk to you, I might know if you're the type of person who wants to have a conversation or if you want to be left alone. There are cues that I'd be able to pick up from this. And looking somebody in the eye digitally, like you said, hey, okay, if you're not going to communicate that much on Twitter, fine, have the presence, at least be there to be able to be approached. But you could say, I'm not probably going to communicate that much on Twitter. That's okay too. That's at least communicating that you're not going to communicate. Right. But when you talk about looking people in the eye digitally, what does that mean?
What it means is, okay, I was, I don't know, I'm losing track now. I'm 65, but I was probably 16 or 17, going on like my first real date. And it must have been 17 because I was driving and I was, my dad's giving me like the typical dad advice about be a gentleman, open the door, this and that. My mom looks at me and she says, forget everything else you heard. Look her in the eyes. Let her know you're paying attention to her. Don't look around because someone else walks in. Don't look at other women. Don't look at other men. Show interest. And then my dad taught me a lot about that from a business perspective, where you're paying attention to somebody. You're not just jumping in to say the next thing. You're really listening to what they say. But more importantly, you're hearing them and getting to know who they are. You're listening to the stories they're telling you. Now, in the digital world, that's a little bit more difficult to do. But in many ways, it's a lot easier to do because before we get on a call, I can go to your LinkedIn. I can go to your Facebook. I can go to your Twitter. I can go to Google. First of all, the first place I usually go is Google. Sure. Because I want to see if there's anything about you that's really out there, whether it's articles or things. Then I want to know some more personal things. And by the way, you don't even have to post a lot. Imagine what I can learn from LinkedIn. Every other place you've worked at, where you went to college. These are clues that give me the ability to show that I'm interested. So I'm reaching out and I send a note and I say, hey, I love Park City. I love skiing. Wow, you live in Park City. That shows that I looked at where you were living. I mean, if I mention like, going to the park with your kids looks so amazing. I'm so glad you posted that. Or asking those questions and then looking for that information. So I'll tell you another story. When I graduated college, my first job was in the investment business, and my initial job in that was to get appointments, to meet people face to face. And my dad was in sales most of his life, and he calls me up the end of my first week, and he says, so how'd it go? I said, it went great. He goes, did you get an appointment? I said, yeah. He goes, when is it? I said, next Thursday. He said, what time? I said, 10 o'clock. He said, when are you going to get there? I said, I don't know, 5 to 10. He goes, no, get there at 9 o'clock. Now remember, this was 1980. Okay, there was no such thing as social media. There was barely anything that you could find about people unless you went to a library and looked it up on something called microfiche, which had old articles that were printed. He goes, walk around the neighborhood, see what restaurants are there, what the neighborhood looks like. Go inside to the building, look up on the board and see what other companies are there. Get to the office at least 15 or 20 minutes early and see if there's any way that the person you're meeting with's assistant can let you into the office. So you can see, are there photos on the wall? Are there trophies on the desk? Are they a grandparent, a parent, a skier, a golfer? Find points of emotional connection, because people love when you care about them, when you can make a comment about them, when you don't necessarily say, oh, I see you have grandchildren, but you can say, wow, I was with my grandparents the other day and they are like the light of my life. It just gives you tools to be able to make that connection, whereas you're not just walking in the door, opening up your case and saying, this is what I have to sell to you. So looking people in the eye digitally is kind of like, I call it Dale Carnegie for the digital age. Dale Carnegie stressed connecting with people, knowing something about them. Right, I write down in my contacts, I will write down when we met, where we met. I'll put into my notes the first email exchange we might have had, just so that I can have points. And when I meet people, I will quickly look back into my thing. And by the way, there's two ways to do this. You can do it if you're lucky, maybe on the side, someone doesn't notice, and you go, wow, William, we met with David Breyer in 2016, and whatever it happened to be. And then you go, wow, I can't believe you remember that. Or you see me looking it up, don't hide it. And you go, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking into my notes about you. He goes, you got notes about me? Oh, yeah, we met here and we went here. And then I think you emailed me and you're like, you saved that? Yeah. That makes as much of an impression on that person as them thinking that you remembered without that, because you cared to take that time. And then they also look at you and go, wow, that's a great idea. Maybe I should do that. Now, most people won't. Just like for birthdays, when I personalize it and I send a quote and I send something about it, and if they respond to me, I respond. How many people do you write something to, or they write to you, you respond back, and then you never hear back from them? Sure. That's what looking people in the eye digitally is. It's taking that time to use the tools at your fingertips. I've been to business meetings. It freaks me out. I'm an advisor. I'm on a board. I'm doing consulting. I go to a meeting. The sales guy, the first thing he says to the person we're meeting with is, so how long have you been here? And I want to hit my forehead. I want to smack him on the back of the head. You didn't go to LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn, for God's sake. Like, you didn't take note of that. Like the way that should have happened, and not necessarily one of these two ways, but either the person has been there for 15 years and you go, wow, William, you've been here for 15 years. I can really learn a lot from you about this company. Or, William, you've only been here for a few months. What can we do to support you? Rather than, how long have you been here? Like, you didn't bother checking. That's the first thing that goes through my mind. You didn't care enough to check it out. Sure.
Yeah. It shows a lack of care. And I'm going to call you out on this right now. You actually do send a very personalized message on birthday, because I know I get one from you every year. And I'm like, man, this guy is on it. Like, I think you send me a better message than maybe I even send my brother on his birthday. I'm like, this is a really good message. So you live it.
I live it. It's something, again, my dad told me when I was young. I always kept people's birthdays in a date book. Remember the ones, well, you might not remember the ones we used to write in.
Oh, yeah. And I'm old enough to do it. Yeah, I'm right there.
Every Christmas week, we'd be off from work, and I would take my old date book and take my new one and go through every day and add the birthdays of the people that were in there. And, that made me stand out back then, because people didn't take the time to do that. Now, of course, Facebook and LinkedIn alert everybody about everybody's birthday if it's on your profile. So what do you do that's different? So I, every year, pick a special quote that I share with people. I personalize it. If I have a deeper relationship with that person than just someone I met once or twice, I'll make a comment in that note about something else. And then I started listening harder for other birthdays, the ones that aren't on your profiles. Mm-hmm. So I have now in here, I have anniversaries. I have children's birth. All my friends, all the people I've known, if they had kids or grandkids, while I knew them and they announced it, I would add it to my date book. Very often if you see me and we're out to dinner with some people and someone mentions something like that, you'll see me, if you're attuned to it and you watch me, You'll see me grab my phone, and I'll either, if I don't have time to look up the person in my date book, I'll just send an email of myself. William Harris's daughter's birthday, July 7th, 2014. Because now I put it in my date book, I reach out to that person, and those connections are what return a relationship and looking people in the eye digitally is all about.
Yeah. I want to take this and make this very practical for people that are listening then in the e-commerce space, right? Where it's like, okay, taking this, making this digital, when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of customers, it can sometimes feel daunting as far as, well, how do I make that a reality versus just employing some kind of like cheap text message or whatever that goes out. And one of the phrases that I've used that I think fits very well with something that you've talked about here too is there was a company that I said, I want to make sure that they became your local online retailer. And the reason why I said that is like, it's kind of going back to like old school. It's like, oh, your local hardware store or your local whatever store. And I was like, I want you to feel as if it's your local online retailer. So that way when people reach out to you, they feel as if they're getting that personal connection, that it's like, them by name. Oh, it's Joe, it's Ted. Hey, come on in. Like, I'm excited to see you. Check out what new I've got here for you. I know you like this. Just got a shipment of these in here, and I know you love these, right? So it's like, how can you make people feel as if they are welcome, where they just came into a place that loves them and recognizes who they are? That's the key. And there are very few people that I think do this exceptionally well. There's one that I'll call out here that I'm very impressed with whenever I order from them, which is Sweetwater. So I'm a musician. I love ordering stuff from Sweetwater. And there's, a special, basically like, it's like my guy kind of thing there. And it's like, I order something and, I get a text message from him, not just from the company, right? He's like, hey, I saw that you ordered this. Want to let you know, we just got that shipped out for you. If you need any help getting it set up, let me know. Happy to set up a call basically and make sure you can get it integrated with the rest of your stuff. And they mean that too. And so it's like, sometimes I'll order something like, boy, I'm struggling. It's like, Aaron, all right, I need some help here. I'm not getting my settings right. He's like, no problem. Let me walk you through this. And it feels like I'm talking to like my guy down at the store, right? And I think that the idea here is, it's like, you talk about looking people in the eye digitally. This is a really great way to do this. If your store is not leveling up to that level, it's very easy for them to just start going to Amazon to buy your stuff. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to compete, it goes beyond just fast shipping, good products. It goes to, how can you look your customers in the eye digitally? And that's one way that I think that you can level that up. That's not practical for everybody, but that's one way.
It's especially for specialty retailers who have that opportunity, because it is, especially Roadrunner Sports does a good job with that. They know every sneaker I've bought. They will mention it if I call them for some advice. I call it retail coming full circle. So I love your point about your digital retailer becoming your local retailer, because what I talk about is when I was a kid, it was mostly local retailers. Even the big department stores were fewer and far between. So you went into your local store. It was Nemo's, where we bought sneakers and we bought hiking boots and we bought outdoor gear. It was Schwatzky's, where we bought our clothing and our back to school clothes. Retailers come full circle. There was a time where that was expected. Your merchant knew you. They made recommendations. They had to be very careful with those recommendations, because you'd be back the next week to complain if it didn't work out. And either they would have to eat it by taking it back, or they'd lose a customer, or at the very least, you might not shop there as much. And then the era of being able to go incognito to major department stores came in, and everybody kind of relished in that. They could go, nobody could see them, nobody knew them. But people missed the personalization. And again, there are, even Amazon, you might call that they are the big player, but they are the most personalized of all. Now, they might not have that deep personal relationship with you, but they know everything you bought. They've got 1 million people to solve your problems. They're incredibly good at solving those problems. So if you want to compete with them, and you are a specialty retailer especially, there is an opportunity, whether it's you're selling alcohol that might be special, not just mass marketed, or musical equipment, or running shoes, or so many others. And then even all the rest. I mean, my business partner and I wrote a lot about this in Retail Relevancy, that simplicity is the new EDLP. If you're not in the
Yeah.
retail industry, EDLP is everyday low pricing that was made famous by Walmart, which was there shouldn't be discounts. You should have good prices all the time. And we like to say that simplicity is that new thing. It's so important. But simplicity doesn't just mean in and out quickly. It means simplicity in solving your problems. It means simplicity in finding information. It means simplicity in canceling an order or changing it. Or, there's a lot of great tools out there now because I see all these merchants that I buy from. One is a company called Hydrant that sells a electrolyte drink that you subscribe to, but they warn you a good week in advance when the next subscription's coming. If you'd like to cancel, just click on the button and change your date. Sprintly delivers my vegan meals. Same thing. They give you alerts. They let you know when it's on its way. They personalize in ways that they can do without necessarily knowing you that well. And then when it gets to the point of knowing you better, there are so many tools available now that there's really no excuse except for maybe a very beginning startup, which clearly might not have the budget for it. But it's so important because, again, like you said, it's what locks people into you. I mean, it's what's done it for Amazon for me, mainly because they make it easy for me and they solve my problems. And truth be told, they always have from the beginning, even when they were just a bookseller. And maybe all these tools weren't available to them. I guess Jeff Bezos seemed to be obsessive about that. And granted, now it's a lot easier for them because they have unlimited budgets and it's a little bit harder for others. But what you mentioned about your music retailer, here's a guy that does have that ability because he knows this stuff. He can reach out to people. His business isn't millions and millions of customers. And if it is, my guess is someone like him will bring in more people like him to be able to give that kind of service to his customers, which again adds to, it raises the average order value. It raises frequency of purchase and it raises lifetime value of a customer, which are all
big time,
all incredibly important and can be affected by looking people in the eye digitally, by making things simple, by valuing return on relationship.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up retail relevancy because I wanted to get into that book a little bit as well. There's a couple of other things that you mentioned in there that I think go along with this. One of those you talked about me-mail instead of email, right? So like what's me-mail versus email?
Well, I find so many brands are creating terrible brand equity destruction by banging people over the head with email. Email is one of the most vastly used retargeting formats. Again, same thing online it happens, but mostly via email or other type of text messaging. And they're killing people. It's one email after another. And what I like to say is they are not looking at the way it's affecting the customer experience. All they're looking at is the percentage raise in sales they create. They're not looking at the customers they're losing or the people that are no longer buying. They look at the sale itself for the most part. Don't get me wrong. I'm generalizing. You have to do that when you talk about things like that. There are brands that do a better job of it. But for the most part, we get banged over the head with email. And I like to say, make it me-mail. We all want something that's valuable to us, whether it's your newsletter having valuable content, not just something pushing your products. Whether your emails, again, advice about the product that they just bought, something asking them how their experience was. Are you enjoying the product? Are there other products that maybe we could add to our product line that would make you happy? Making it personalized, but not everyone thinks personalization now is including your name in an email. That's not personalization. Right. That's basic email marketing that anybody can do, on Cheetah, on any of the email applications that are available now. It's me-mail means it's something important to me. It's a topic that's important to me. It's giving me the opportunity to opt out of emails that I'm getting that aren't, that actually let me unsubscribe. What brand actually lets you unsubscribe anymore? It doesn't exist. You hit the unsubscribe button. It says, first of all, nine out of 10 times you get a message that it takes us 60 to 90 days to get you out of our queue.
Sure.
That's total bullshit. It takes 3 seconds. It takes less than 3 seconds. It's nothing. I mean, that's crap. That's because they want to email you for another 60 to 90 days, hoping they can turn you around and you'll change your mind from unsubscribing. Second of all, even when they do take you out right away, they tend to add you back. I mean, you noticed that, right? You stop getting emails for a while, all of a sudden you're getting them again because there's no organization that's overseeing that. So they think they're getting away with something, but actually what they're doing is they're hurting their brand. And they're not looking at, why is Chase still sending me advertisements? I've been a Chase customer since 1981. They were my first account. I've had every business account I've ever had where I was in control at Chase. My business partner, John Andrews, who was the primary author on the book, talks about Bank of America doing the same thing for him, how they target him with ads, and the dollars that are being wasted because they're just not paying attention to these things, because it's mass email. It's numbers. It's, can we get up by a fraction of a point, and what does that do? That's what retargeting is all about. And again, it has value if used judiciously and appropriately. But in essence, I think so many brands are killing themselves with this. And then part of that goes to public companies and venture money and having to make your quarterly numbers and not looking at the long term, but looking at the short term. And, that's kind of what it's all about. So email is about, make it about me, and I will open it every damn time. Make it about you, and it's way less likely that I'm going to do that.
It reminds me of something that I talk to my team about often, which is romance our customers. Right. When you think about it, so we do advertising, right, for e-commerce brands, and you buy something from an e-commerce store, and almost inevitably, the very first ad that you're going to see from that company, let's say, the following day, is an ad to buy something else. And the email that you're going to get is, hey, confirming it, and then you're going to get an email to buy something else, upsell. And then you're going to get a text message to buy something else, right? There's no romance in that. There's no developing that relationship with the customer. And so that's fine. On the short term, you'll absolutely increase some of those numbers that you're talking about. But in the long term, you haven't developed that relationship with that customer from a really, truly loyalty perspective. And so one of the things we talk about is like, how do you make them say, wow, I definitely made the right decision in buying this product? This could be showing them a video of that product in use, and they go, oh yeah, see, that's it. I love it. I love seeing the way that's done. Or it could be an email talking about how, thank you so much. We just donated this, or we just planted these trees, or we just did something. But like, it has nothing to do with buying again. It's just, how do you, and you would know if that matters to that person, but how do you start to develop that relationship and romance them as a customer? Because that's going to have a much longer lasting effect. And you would talk about LTV. That's going to make a bigger difference on your LTV rather than just immediately asking them to buy again right after they just bought.
Exactly.
Something else you talked about then is ignoring omni-channel, instead omnipresent. What do you mean by ignore omni-channel, instead look at omnipresent?
Well, now, if I did say ignore, I'm going to correct that now. What I really meant was it's time to shift from omni-channel to omnipresent. Just to be clear, because omnichannel is important. I'm not saying ignore it. Just like I don't say ignore ROI. It's incredibly important. Just add the ROR factor, the return relationship factor to it. So what I'm saying about that is omnichannel implies silos. It's right there. And our biggest problem in most of our companies is silos. I mean, I work with a company called Evergreen Trading. They're a media trade company. They help company dispose of troubled assets at their book value instead of at the big losses they would take, and they trade it for media. And their biggest challenge is that they need to bring together a CFO, a procurement person, and a marketing person. And sometimes these people don't even know each other in the organizations. So to me, what happens with omni-channel is you think of them each as a separate channel when they're not. They are all part of your process of either building brand awareness to your clients or getting them or embracing them as a customer. So when I say omnipresent, meaning make it so if I'm on this, if I'm on my laptop, if I'm in my car, whatever new technology comes out, however AI is going to change our world or make it better, embrace that and make your products and everything available across, make it omnipresent, make it something that you can get everywhere. Make it that you don't have to worry about where you buy it and where you return it because it's the same thing. And to me, again, I will get a lot of people that'll say to me, well, that's what omnichannel really is. And I'm saying words are important.
Yeah.
When what happens with omnichannel is, again, I still hear people talking about mobile. Everything's mobile. Why are we having a conference about mobile marketing? Why is there somebody standing on the stage talking about their mobile marketing initiatives? That creates a silo. Everything's mobile. For God's sake, our laptops. I mean, look at the new Apple product now. We're going to be people going to be
Apple Vision Pro.
experience. So when I
Absolutely.
talk about omnipresent, I mean, let's bring it all together. Let's get rid of the silos. Let's get everybody working together.
Yeah.
Let's make it one purchase, not where did you purchase.
I like that. Yeah, I'm glad you called out the Apple Vision Pro because I'm a big fan of VR and AR and MR and XR and whichever R you want to call it, but R on R, right? Lots of R's. And so I like where you're going, where it's like, what does mobile even mean anymore in today's world? Everything's mobile. Your watch is mobile. I mean, there are so many mobile things now, and it's a matter of just how do we just unify all of that? And like you said, omnipresent. The other thing that you said that I really liked too is the only time you have 100% of your customers' attention is when they're looking for customer service. Take me through that one too.
So it's basically on the premise is that when someone wants something from you, you have 100% of their attention. If someone's trying to sell you something, they are there at your beck and call. They are going to watch every movement you make. They're going to see what you do. If you walk into a auto dealer, they're going to be watching you and looking for signs that you're ready for someone to talk to. So the story I like to tell is I'm a divorced dad. And when my daughters were young, as we all know, sometimes it's hard to get your kids' attention, especially when they're starting to get to the age where you feel like you need to give them advice that's important. Not not that simple advice, but the advice about how to fix a tire or, not to take a ride home from someone that was drinking or whatever it happens to be. And I like to say that when my daughters wanted money was the best time to communicate with them. When that hand is out, that child is listening to every single word that comes out of your mouth, waiting to hear if they're getting money and if they are, how much. So to me, as a dad, that was my best time to market to my daughters. That's when I knew they were listening. Okay, honey, I'd really love to talk about this, but listen, I want to make sure when you go out tonight, if anything happens, don't go home with someone that was drinking. Call me if you need anything. I'll be happy to pick you up. Again, this was before Uber days. And all the other kinds of advice we want to give our kids, whether it's listen in school or pay attention or make sure to get your homework done on time. And, I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but the point is they want it. The minute you put that money in their hand, hands closed, they're gone. Yeah, Dad, thanks. So I liken this to customer service. When a customer has a problem, and listen, let's not limit customer service to the customer service call. Customer service is when someone's in your store. Customer service is when someone's checking out. Customer service is on digital when someone is deciding between something and maybe that there's a text application or some way you can communicate with them. When they are in that decision-making mode and they have questions or they're having a problem with the product and they want to return it or they want to figure out how to get it fixed, you've got them. So there's two types of marketing that go on now. There's your brand and your reputation marketing. So I like to say that a brand is what a business or a person does. A reputation is what people share, is what people remember and share. I'm sorry. A brand is what you do. A reputation is what people remember and share. So where does brand and reputation come in? They took my call. They were quick to get back to me. They got me answers I needed. That's brand and reputation. Then the other side of it is you've got their attention. Now you can talk about things to them. How is by the way, I'm looking this up. It's going to take a moment to come up. Just like to know, how was your brand experience? Did you get what you needed? Is there any other questions you have? This is a time to connect with them, not to connect with them and waste their time, but to connect with them and let them know that you're concerned and you care. So, and again, the best time for that is when they need customer service. You have 100% of their attention. Don't miss that opportunity. Take that opportunity to build your brand and to build your relationship with the customer.
That's huge. Yeah. And we've all had those moments where customer service turned into the exact thing that you don't want it to be, where you're like, I had little faith in this brand before, and now I have even less faith. And so when you had 100% of my attention and you gave me the absolute worst you possibly could at that moment, and you cemented your own fate in that.
Well, and a big part of that is having the right tools available to your people, whether it's, again, your people that are facing your customer in the store, the people that are communicating people through apps on the digital e-commerce sites, and the people that are in customer service, whether it's digitally, via text, via messaging, or on the phone, giving them the tools to solve the problem, whether it's access to people that can give them answers, whether it's allowing them the ability to make decisions. I mean, that's so important. One of the reasons the Ritz-Carlton has one of the best brands in the world is they give every single employee that faces a customer and open to buy to solve a customer's problem. Now, obviously, that open to buy goes up as a person goes up in authority or in their ability to work with customers. Granted, your general manager has the most, but even a person cleaning your room has the ability to make a decision to do something to help you. And then what Rich does that's so amazing is they don't just allow it to happen. They analyze it. They look at it. They work with the people that give away too much. They work with the people that don't give away enough. There's something to be said for both of those things. If you're not using some of that ability to solve problems, then the odds are you're probably just saying no instead of utilizing it. So this to me is what's so important.
I love it. We're getting closer towards the end, and so I want to shift into the who is Ted Rubin a little bit. And I want to start by asking about your shirt. Let's Ripple. What does this mean?
It's funny. I've been sitting here holding back from mentioning anything because I literally just said in my head, I'm going to wait till the end and see if William mentions it. And if he doesn't, then I'll bring it up. So Let's Ripple is around the concept that every action creates a ripple effect. Think of throwing a stone in the pond, even if it's just throwing it in the middle or skimming it, and the circles of movement of water that come out from it. So the concept is start a ripple and make a difference. Every action we take, we're rippling right now. I come on your show, you create content for your audience. It helps you, it helps your audience, it helps me because it creates content for me to share. Because I will take this and I will, first of all, listen to it. Because I find that on all of these, and we spoke about this briefly when we got together before the event about a week ago, that I love when I'm asked questions that I'm not prepared for because I come up with ideas that I want to extend upon. So, my buddy Steve Harper is a guy like you that I knew for many years online before I met him face to face. And either I was in Austin and he wasn't there, or things didn't happen. Steve is a local entrepreneur in Austin. He owns a number of software companies, mostly smaller, locally targeted, like school districts, things like that he does locally. And he started talking about, he loves to say it's like return a relationship, about how when you do things for people, it affects you. Like, same thing we all say. I like to say, do for others without expectation of anything directly in return. It will always come back to you in one way or another. It has to do with brand. It has to do with a network gives you reach, and a community gives you power. Networks connect. Communities care. Return a relationship. Be good to people. I love adopting. So I have some of my own. Return a relationship is my own. This dad won't quit is my own. I love to adopt other people's things. So you've seen me with be good to people. So I'm always wearing the bracelet. You've seen no let up, which has become part of my life mantra, which came from a buddy of mine named Tony Luisi. These people either come to me and ask me to embrace their concepts, or I discover them and I reach out to them. So Steve had been back and forth with me forever. He finally got me on his podcast about 6 or 7 months ago. I was heading to Austin. Thank goodness this year he was there during South by Southwest. We got together. He shared his T-shirts with me. I love it. I've got a hat that says Ripple on, because here's another part of it. It's not just adopting people's things and sharing it because they relate to what you believe in. It's when you wear a T-shirt with a message, exactly what just happened here happens. And it happens on a regular basis. So I didn't necessarily need to engage you. That's what this talk is all about. But when I'm at events, when I'm on the street, people will come up to me and say, so what's Let's Ripple? And it creates that opening for people to converse with you. We all say, go to events, network, get to know people. It's not easy walking up to people cold. By the way, people think of me as an extrovert. I am not. I'm an introvert. I hate walking into a room where I don't know people. I don't have to start conversations. So what do? I game the system by wearing things or having a message. I bought my socks. I wear funky socks, and I have a Ted Psaki. So a lot of people who recognize me will say, hey, man, show me your socks. That's giving them an easy way to start a conversation with me without having to say, hi, Ted, what are you doing now? Or aren't you Ted Rubin? Or something which is uncomfortable for people. And for me, it gets people to walk right up to me. And now I have the ability to say, hey, William, what do you do? Oh, I see you're with, Element. What does Element do? Maybe there's an opportunity for us to work together. So that's kind of what it's all about. And Let's Ripple just embraces that completely, because that's what it's all about.
I love everything you said. And the Let's Ripple idea, it reminds me a lot of actually our mission statement at Element, which is amplify joy through profitable business growth. And it kind of came to us with this idea of, if you've ever been in a car and somebody honks their horn at you, what happens? You're angry, right? You don't even know if they necessarily honked their horn at you, but you're angry because you think maybe they just honked it at me. And you're like, I'm going as fast as the guy in front of me, right? Like, get off my case. And you almost inevitably want to be a little bit aggressive towards the next person that you run into as well. It's a very, it ripples in a negative way. But the opposite is also true. Joy ripples as well. And so, if we can say, well, sure, profitable business growth, that's mostly what we're focused on. That's like what we do. That's the core of what we're doing. But that might not always happen. There are going to be days, weeks, months where economy's down or whatever happens and they don't grow. How can we still amplify the joy of working with us? And that could be through just, did we do what we said we were going to do? When we talk to you, do we talk to you like you're a human being, or do we talk to you like you're a robot and just expect things out of? And so, having these conversations of ours, how do we amplify that joy? And if we amplify, let's say, joy towards one of our customers, well, they're going to take that to the rest of their team. They're, because of that joy, you want to spread that as well. And then they're going to take that home to them with their kids. And then their kids are going to want to take that to their school. And this just amplifies very much. And so it's a very simple way of just simply making sure that our whole team is thinking through, is that interaction, is that going to amplify joy or not? And if it's not, maybe we need to consider whether or not we do it.
Exactly. I love that.
I also wanted to ask you about, okay, what about your childhood? Is there something growing up that led to you being the guy that you are? Somebody who says, I'm not going to let up. Somebody that says, I believe in the value of return on relationship. You talked about your mom and dad a little bit, but it's like, is there something that they instilled in you as a young age, or where did this come from?
Well, that's a great question. And it's funny you bring that up, because there is absolutely a number of people in my life. But, first and foremost, it was my folks. My parents were very much about being good to people. They didn't tolerate, negativity in that way. They faced their own challenges. Yeah. They were both Depression era kids. My dad's father died at the age of 47. He had to leave the house at 16 when his dad was still alive. So I found this out after he passed away. I never understood this. My dad worked up in the Catskills when he was 16. And I always thought it was a summer job, because that's the world we live in and where our mindset comes. And then after he died, I had lunch with my uncle, who explained, no, your dad moved out because there wasn't room for him in the apartment anymore, because we had this much younger brother who had been sleeping in my parents' room, and he needed to send money home. So my dad just taught me about doing for others. My dad was the guy that pulled over on the road and took garbage cans that had been blown off of people's front walks and put them back. He was the one that made me, before I went out shoveling walks to make money, I had to do my house and my neighbors' homes, who the ones that didn't have kids like me that could do it. I am now the guy that stops in the middle of the road when there's a cone laying there and it's blocking traffic. And I'll stop my car, put on my flashers, jump out, tell people to stop, pull the thing out of the way, get back in my car. So that was a big thing. My mom, as I told you, taught me to pay attention to people, look at people. She was an educator. Mom, you were right. I didn't work hard enough in college. I should have worked harder. I'll tell you that now. I hope you're listening. But the person that really instilled the most about no let up in my life was my junior high and high school wrestling coach, Ira Guy Bell, who, him and his wife, Roz, are like second parents to me, have been my entire life. I visit them every year. I will be visiting them in July when I drive north for a couple of months for the summer from Florida. They live in Virginia now. They lived in Pine, Arizona. People that follow me are always seeing me post about them whenever I visit. He was just an amazing coach, and I was fortunate to have him all through junior high and into high school. He moved up, became the high school coach. He taught us about respect. He taught us about never giving up. He was the kind of coach that didn't believe in necessarily having the most winning team. It was more about everybody getting an opportunity to participate. So if you were a junior and there was a senior that you were better than, he got to wrestle half the season in the starting matches, because it was about experience. This is high school. This isn't pro sports. It's not college. Sure. He was building men. And, he built me. I mean, he taught me about, I walk stairs. I have something that I post. I use a hashtag what you can when you can, WYCWYC, which I got from two fitness bloggers, Ronnie Noon and Carla Bernberg, who wrote a book about it, about how you don't have to go to the gym to work out. You can walk
Sure.
Park your car as far from the gym as possible. And how many people do you see circling the parking lot of the gym?
Sure.
And then they go in and run 5 miles. They couldn't just park their car and walk up, and they're cursing while they can't find the spot.
Sure.
Well, my coach taught me to take the stairs whenever you can, to walk 2 stairs at a time. His line was, if you take the stairs 2 steps at a time, you'll be in shape for the rest of your life. When I worked in Manhattan, anytime I worked in an office where I was not above the 5th floor, I walked the stairs. I didn't take the elevator. And he was just about doing for others. He taught us teamwork. This was back when you could work out in the coach's basement, and he'd have us over his house. And when we couldn't wrestle at the gym, we'd wrestle there. We built the fence and the walkways in his home. It wasn't child labor. It was taking teammates and teaching them how to work together over something that wasn't necessarily fun like the sport. Plus, we were wrestlers. So team was a little different concept than being on a soccer field or relying on somebody. You still had scores for a whole team, but you didn't have someone to fill in for you or to sub for you. And he's been a part of my life forever. He's 81 years old. He is nonstop. He's the reason I'm vegan. A lot of people know I've been vegan since 2016. That's because of him. It's something he discovered when he had issues with his health, even though he looked like he was in amazing shape. So thank you, Ira. Thank you, Roz. His wife has been as much a part of it as he has, because they were always an amazing team and still are.
I love that. I had to laugh when you talked about parking far away. My daughters tease me about how far I park away. I'll find whatever the first parking spot is. That's where I pull in. There's like 30 more parking spots there, Dad. Like, what are you doing? Right. So then the one time I parked is absolutely far away. I mean, there was no cars even remotely close to us, just to have a little fun with them. I wanted to ask one more. What's that?
How old are your girls?
13, 10, and 7.
Oh, awesome. So that's got to be a lot of fun, the reactions you get from them. But I talk about skipping. And how you can never be unhappy when you skip. And whenever I learned this, when my daughters would fight, I'd take them by the hand and skip, and it would all stop. And now I try to teach companies that if you can make your vendors, your partners, your employees, your family members metaphorically skip with every interaction, you win. And that's just a great opportunity. Like, I would park farther away just so I'd have more time with them. Because my time, our time is limited. Whether you're a divorced dad or not, you go to work, you have other obligations. You got to suck that time up, buddy, because it's going to pass and they're going to be older and you're going to miss it.
I already feel it. It goes by way too fast. I wanted to ask you one more. I know that we're over time. Are you okay to go over a little bit longer?
I can go a little bit longer, sure, as long as your audience isn't bored and clicking out already.
Well, no. I hope they're not. I wanted to ask you because you talked about Seth Godin. You said there was an interesting story there, and I actually haven't heard this story before. So about how you met him or something like that, right?
So it was kind of a fun story. I'm coming up to New York. It's 1997. The internet and coding was kind of a new thing. I mean, at least new to the world. Obviously not new in general, but it was something people had heard about. And the internet, it started this thing where people were like, oh my God, there's these guys. They're always on the computer and they're doing things. So I'm getting ready to come up. I tell a few people, they're like, oh man, be careful because those coders are really weird. So just keep your distance from them. So I, by the way, again, this is early. There's no social media. I'd never seen a photo of Seth. So I didn't even know what he looked like. I did research him, but the books I found didn't have his pictures on them. And I come up to New York and I go up to Irvington. There's this big cavernous office that's right next to the train station. And I go inside and I go up to the front desk. And right away, I see this really weird guy walk by. And he's bald and he's got big glasses and he's wearing a turtleneck sweater that goes from his neck down to his ankles. And he's got flip-flops on. And it is December and freezing out. Okay. And I'm like, oh. It's one of those coders, man. I gotta stay cool. Like, people were right. So I meet this guy David Simon, who at the time was running all their sales. I had to meet, and we go into the conference room, and we're talking, and we're going back and forth, and we're hitting it off. And he's like, "Wow, you are just what we need, but I want you to meet somebody." And he didn't say, "I want you to meet Seth." He just said, "I want you to meet somebody." And again, I was not quite used to the startup environment where, it kind of goes from that guy right to the founder. It doesn't necessarily go to all these levels. And some of the other companies I interviewed with when I was up, they were, again, more levels. So I'm sitting and my back is to the door. And if your audience knows, Seth is bald and like me, and all of a sudden I don't hear the door open and I feel a hand on my head going, I like it. That's all I'm getting. And now I'm a New Yorker. I was living in Florida at the time, but you know how we are. And my nature is kind of like, what the, like, I'm ready to turn around and slug this guy. And I turn around and it's the weird coder guy.
Yeah.
But something in me, something in his eyes just made me hold back. And of course, part of it might have been, I'm on an interview, don't be an idiot, you don't know what's happening. Yeah. So I turn around, I go, oh, hi. And he goes, Seth Godin, nice to meet you. It was Seth with the turtleneck down to his ankles and the flip-flops and the fun of the story is that, again, if I had overreacted, it probably would have been the end of the conversation. Meanwhile, he ended up hiring me on the spot. The big thing was that I needed more money than they had. It wasn't nearly what these jobs pay now. It was nothing. But they made an accommodation to figure out how they could make it work for me, that I could move up with my family. And they were not a heavily financed startup with just unlimited funds to move people. But, we worked out something where I got some advances on commissions, et cetera, et cetera. But the funny story is that crazy coder guy, and by the way, Seth is not a coder, but it was just, it has to do with the stories you hear and these images that people give us, and then holding back and realizing it's better to be nice to someone regardless of what they're doing than the other way around. And I would have to say that a big part of that is responsible for, what I've learned and what I've done since and everything else since then.
I love
Thank
it.
you, Seth.
Yes, that is wild. If people wanted to work with you, if they wanted to reach out, connect with you, follow you, read your books, what's the best way for them to just stay in touch and keep in touch with you?
Well, the easiest way to be directly in touch with me is to email or call me. My email address is tedrubin@gmail.com. My phone number is 516-270-5511. My voicemail is not full. So if I don't answer, you can actually leave me a voicemail and I will call you back. I answer my phone if I'm available. Email is the best medium for me for follow-up. Feel free to text me if it's immediate. Google Ted Rubin. The first 15 or 20 pages is a lot of my life. Building SEO for yourself really does have value because it's easy to find me. I'm Ted Rubin on every social media platform. Connect with me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are the ones, Instagram. That I use most. I have a TikTok account. I publish on it periodically. I'm not real active there. But I will give you one last piece of advice related to this part of the conversation. Connect with people the way that's best for them if you are the one that has interest in connecting. And this really goes for salespeople. Don't insist on emailing me if I say text is best. Don't insist on texting me if I say email is best. Where this happens with me most is people message me on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I am very upfront. I say, this is great. I'm so glad to connect with you. But the best way to communicate with me going forward, if you're really looking for follow-up, is email. The most immediate is text. And they keep messaging me on LinkedIn and want to know why I haven't responded in a timely manner or something like that. And I learned this, again, back to stories about my daughters. I learned this about my daughters because I'm like all dads. It's tough to communicate with your kids these days. And we all want them to pick up the phone, or maybe less of us now than 20 years ago when it was for me. But as a divorced dad, it was even more critical. I didn't see my daughters. I only got them every other weekend, every Wednesday night. So, but I would call them, and I bet you this happened to every one of you. You call your kids and you get a text back that says, "What?" with an exclamation point. Okay?
Yeah.
That's their way of telling you that they don't want to communicate by phone, that they're available, but they're not going to pick up. So, learn to communicate with them the way they want. So there was a point where I was communicating with one of my daughters via Snapchat because it was the only medium that she listened to. And it really goes in the business world and with friends. If you want to stay close to people, communicate the way they want to. And if you are the person, communicate to people how best to communicate with you. And then the last thing I like to close with, which is basically wraps this all up, is that relationships are like muscle tissue. The more you engage them, the stronger and more valuable they become.
That's beautiful. Ted, I can't thank you enough for the incredible wisdom and the time that you gave us here today. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. And, William, a lot of it is because of you. I don't say yes to everybody, and I don't enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed it with you. So let's do this again.
I'd love that. Thank you, everybody else, for listening in. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.